Is the new Persona 5 Gacha any good, or is it just nostalgia bait? Now, I'm not a lifelong JRPG fan. Persona 4 Golden on the Vita never hooked me. Turn-based felt slow. Then, I tried it again on Steam, and it still bounced off. A few years later, Persona 5 went on sale, and that changed everything for me. The combat, the story, the characters, I was absorbed. I even bought a Steam Deck so I could run Palaces on my lunch break. It basically became a dedicated Persona machine. When the credits rolled, the gap it left was big enough that I went back and finished P4G. The systems felt dated, but the cast won me over, and that's a topic for another day. So when I heard a P5 Gacha was stuck in China, I kept my eye on it. Months later, it's finally playable here, and I want to see whether it's a worthwhile spin-off or just a cash grab. After finishing Persona 5, I looked at the spin-offs, Strikers, Tactica, and so on, but I still wanted the core gameplay loop. Persona 5X looked like it might fill that gap. I've played plenty of gachas like Nikkei, AFK Arena, Epic 7, and the list goes on. I've been playing Nikkei since before the Chainsaw Man collab and still keep up with my dailies to this day. So I kept my expectations in check when it comes to gacha games. What I hoped for was the usual Persona rhythm with only a light gacha layer, a good story, solid side characters, and the series' trademark style. What I didn't want was another mobile title that turns into a daily chore checklist, even though that's how most gachas end up. As soon as the game booted, I felt the nostalgia, the same title screen, familiar locations, and even the original casino intro. This time ending with the new protagonist, Wonder, stepping in to fight Joker. The music was the exact same as the original game by Lin. The excitement almost made me forget the incoming gacha grind. What immediately stood out was the production quality. Full voice acting, classic anime cutscenes, and some CGI likely added to save on animation costs. I expected the voices to drop off outside main scenes, but they stayed consistent. Story-wise, it tracks closely to Persona 5, which you'll either see as comforting or repetitive. The high fades quickly though when the tutorial floods the screen with system pop-ups. Typical for gachas and probably only gonna get worse. It's still Persona, just busier. All the familiar beats are here. Main story, mementos runs, palaces, new allies now wrapped in extra menus. Free time actions such as studying or working cost a stamina bar that recharges each day. A second resin meter like Genshin's fuels short material runs for personas and upgrade items. Social links return as synergies, same idea with more upgrade tabs. In short, everything you did in P5 is present, tweaked to make you log in daily and surrounded by systems that sometimes feel like more work than they need to be. But what about the actual combat, one of the staples of Persona games? It's still the same familiar combat loop, but changed to make it more simple. Baton Pass has auto elemental attacks and all characters have an ultimate. There's also more status ailments and enemies can take a couple hits of their weakness before actually being knocked down. So I would say overall it's more simple. However, the team building is more complex with everyone having their passives and playstyles. So team building is really where the strategy comes into play. Persona management is different this time. The system had to change to work with the Phantom Idols, so there's a bit more planning around how each character and Persona pair up. I initially thought fusion was gone. Thankfully it isn't. You can still fuse, but it depends on collecting the correct Persona tokens. No more recipe math, just farm until you have the tokens. Personas also drop randomly in combat or from dedicated dungeons, and they can appear on the character banner, which feels way worse than how you did in the original game, but that's just how it's going to be for a gacha game. There was no other way but to make it grindy or paying your way to fuse certain personas. I haven't reached endgame farming, but can easily see this being a treadmill so that you can get the perfect persona with the right skills. Each one fits a clearer damage or support archetype, skill slots are limited but upgradable, and Wonder the new protagonist can equip fewer personas than Joker. Some parts are simpler. Overall, the system leans heavier on the grinding. Gacha and monetization is exactly what you'd expect. You got your daily free shop gift to encourage logins, multiple currency types to mask IRL prices, and about $20 per 10 pull. Though the best value seems to be the newcomer packs and monthly subscriptions that require daily logins. Pull rates follow the usual Hoyoverse style setup, complete with a separate weapon banner. At least a pity hits 80 pulls, I guess. The big issue with making the Phantom Thieves into gacha idols is it's harder to care about them, and the ones you do want mean opening up your wallet immediately or missing out forever. I got lucky with getting Anne and Ryuji, but Joker being stuck behind a limited banner already left a bad taste in my mouth. And making Iwai's shop a weapon gacha just feels wrong. Low rates combined with a terrible pity makes this an especially frustrating gacha system that is more or less pushing you towards swiping so you can get the characters you know and love. I've only really kept up with Nikkei, but to compare, most SSRs there have a 2% rate, and while there is no pity, you can save tickets across banners to pull for anyone you want. Gatekeeping characters like Joker behind a limited banner with no pull currency sources in the beginning was just a spit in the face of the fans. The beginning of the story feels like it's just replaying the Persona 5 opening, but with your self-insert, basically like a fanfiction. Like you open with fighting Joker, come on. Honestly though, I didn't care because I love Persona 5 and just getting to return felt exciting. As I met the new cast though, I kept missing the original Phantom Thieves. They do appear here too, just less often. The opening scene is nearly identical to Persona 5, except this time your new protagonist Wonder interrupts Joker, and they fight, but it turns out to just be a dream. After that, if you've played Persona 5, you pretty much know what's gonna come. You get a new friend from the metaverse, this time named Luful, a classmate that follows you inside waiting to stop the same bad guy you're after, and eventually everyone awakens to a persona. Luful, by the way, is an enjoyable character along with Mona, who's polarizing. I don't remember seeing too many opinions on Luful versus Mona, but Lufel and Wonder felt a little too obviously designed as counterparts to Mona and Joker, lacking originality. Very predictable, but then again, Persona 5 itself was also predictable too. The difference here is that the execution isn't just as good. It turns out when this game was originally released in China, players felt the same way, though they said it improved significantly later. The first boss especially pales in comparison to someone like Kamoshida, which is unfortunate because it's nearly impossible not to compare them. This made it tricky for me to approach this review. Should I look at P5X purely as a standalone gacha game or constantly measure it against its original? Anyway, the first boss here is the Subway Slammer. At first glance, my reaction was just like, really? This guy? He does have a decent personal connection to your classmate, and his baseball-themed backstory was somewhat compelling, if a bit silly. Initially, though, he's introduced like some random Mementos Request character who somehow ended up getting an entire palace. So let's talk about that. The palace itself is boring and uninspired. Look, I get it. Gacha games are simplified to appeal broadly, especially when limited banners are involved. But this game genuinely treats players like they've never touched a Persona title before, directing your every step and rarely rewarding you for exploring. There's essentially no stakes either because just entering a safe room completely heals your party's HP and SP. The layout isn't memorable. You mostly just run forward from room to room. Exploration is minimal too. No will sees, just a few random treasure chests and breakable items. The parkour sections felt pretty janky, and the puzzles, if you can even call them that, are basically just pushing some boxes around. Playing through Subway Slammer's Palace mostly just made me miss the older Persona games. The saving grace, though, was randomly stumbling into a side story I initially missed because I was at Anime Expo. Quick aside, even though I'm lukewarm on P5 itself, they did a solid job presenting at the expo, especially the Lin concert, which I unfortunately missed. Also, heads up, another Persona concert is scheduled for early 2026, FYI. Anyway, running into Ryuji and Mona briefly made me forget about the game's issues, at least for a moment. I found myself wanting to stick around and follow the old gang instead of just occasionally bumping into them. Like I mentioned earlier, this whole thing just feels like a fan fiction. Pros and cons. Pros, if you love Persona-sized worlds and characters, this game could keep that enjoyment going. Because it's a live service, if the devs handle it well, the stories and characters might steadily improve and become memorable over time. Cons, the gacha system is pretty rough, rates aren't great, the pity system isn't generous, and the in-game currency feels very limited, at least from what I experienced early on. It's set up in a way that might pressure you into spending, especially for characters you actually care about. And there's honestly a whole list of issues the subreddit has put together that actually pushes you to make it a side game rather than a main gacha you daily. Long story short, Global got shafted with rewards, the gacha system, shop prices, and the cadence of content. So, my final thoughts. Will I keep playing Persona 5X? Probably not. I really only have room in my life for one daily gacha grind at a time, especially when I'm already juggling other games. Especially this mostly just reminded me how much I'd rather dive into Persona 3 Reload, and thanks to the Steam Summer Sale, that's exactly what I did instead. But I don't think Persona 5X is a bad game overall. Even though it's a gacha, the developers clearly respected the IP and captured the style and personality of Persona 5, particularly with the new and introduced Phantom Thieves. The polish and presentation are definitely there. The game just isn't what I want from Persona right now. If you're a diehard Persona 5 fan who can resist the urge to spend and stay strictly free to play, this might genuinely be worth trying just for the story and the familiar atmosphere alone. My issue is how the gacha could evolve. What if dupes become necessary for viability? What if popular characters from older Persona games show up and you lack the currency to pull them? Those are just the future issues too. The current version is plagued with issues concerning the gacha side of the game. Ignore that and you might have a good time. Probably not though, to be honest. My final rating for this game is I bought Persona 3 Reload out of 10, which I'm playing through currently on Merciless. Subscribe to follow along with that and let me know your thoughts on P5X below.